So we met last week for the first time, and it was really great. It would be great to just maybe like introduce you who you are and a bit about your journey, because your journey is fantastic and fascinating, and then talk about specifically what brought us together at this time, which was that you're sort of offering a great opportunity for composers, which I really love, and I sort of offered to help spreading access to that opportunity, if you like, through the YouTube.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I definitely appreciate you giving me this platform to share and promote the contest, which I'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, about me personally, I started composing when I was 14. Played violin for 9 years as a young kid. Was never any good at it. It confused the hell out of me as a kid. But I feel like it was a meaningful part of my musical journey that it actually happened. I never actually ended up performing on it. I attended a boy choir school in middle school, got to travel to and sing in some of the great cathedrals of Europe, perform in the New York Philharmonic and Carnegie Hall. Was a punk teenage kid, so I really didn't appreciate the opportunity at the time, but it was creating all this beautiful music and having these great opportunities. And I continued to compose music, studied computer science in college, graduated, started a software company, built that over 14 years, sold the company recently. I'm definitely fast forwarding through a lot of stuff here, but there was a lot of things in there. Music kind of came and went. When I was focusing on the company, there were years that went by when I didn't write anything, and I would feel self-doubt about, oh, am I even a composer anymore, et cetera. There was some inner struggle. But then in 2021, I discovered score relief. Actually score relief, and actually QTube happened first,
Okay.
then score relief, which led to the Northern Film Orchestra.
Fantastic.
And yeah, so and I've had this lifelong dream. I'm not a person who has like a bucket list. But if I ever did have a bucket list, then the only thing on that list was to have my music performed by an orchestra.
Right.
And so, but I never knew how it was going to happen. I just couldn't wrap my mind around the pieces of how that would actually happen. But when I discovered Northern Film Orchestra and that they have these sessions that they do where they share it between composers, I saw like something within me felt like this is the opportunity. And yeah, so I started talking to Jack, and before you knew it, November 15th, 2021 comes around, and I'm sitting there with a 65-piece orchestra, a couple of pieces of music on the stands, which I wrote in college.
And
it
you
was
came over for that, yeah? You came over.
Again? I came over, yeah. Yeah, I was there at Stoller Hall in Manchester. And it was like such a surreal experience. Like it was everything all at once. It was exciting. It was terrifying. Like so much imposter syndrome, like what am I doing here? They did help with that. I mean, Melvin, like just very supportive, like professional, right, and supportive at the same time, because they definitely, I think, are exposed to this kind of thing all the time, what each composer's relationship is to the event of having your music performed by an orchestra. It's a really interesting experience, very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And invigorating. Like I came away from that learning, I think, more than I could have learned if I had studied for a year at uni.
Wow.
In a particular subject. And ultimately, for my personality, that's how I've always learned, is just diving in and doing something, whether it was computer software programming or Gung Fu Tea service or meditation. Like I like to get in there and do it. I'm not a big, like I've tried to take theory, many times in my life, and it bores me to tears, and I can't see if it doesn't have a direct practical link to something for me to work on, it doesn't set.
So could you just touch on a couple of the things that you felt that you took away from it in terms of learning, in terms of knowledge?
Yeah, so the first time, so at this point, I've recorded twice with them because I did it again in 2022.
Yeah.
So at this point, I have the experience of contrast between those two. Like the first time was just like a lot of like, okay, I just need to get through this because without having the experience, there's no way to really prepare. You prepare technically, okay, the music's there, but in terms of like things I couldn't have known were part of the gig is like, how do you listen? Like when you have a very specific period of time you need to record this music in. There's an initial run, you break it down in chunks, and then there's a final performance. So there's 65 different instruments playing. When you're listening, how do you actually tune your ears so that you're focusing enough and can give appropriate feedback while and especially the first time, like not getting lost in the pure emotion of the experience of being present to hear this music. Like there's a job to do.
Yeah.
And in the first time, I really didn't feel confident to speak, like give feedback. Like they usually have a score reviewer in the booth with you, who's making sure that everything's captured in the score.
Yeah.
So that person was really taking the mic and giving all the feedback to Melvin, the conductor. The second time around, I felt a lot more confidence of like, you know what, actually, like I have things to say and I feel comfortable doing it. So I'm going to be the one who's giving instruction. So experience is really the biggest teacher because it comes down to comfort, and because it's the knowing was there. It's just that the mechanics and the confidence to actually access the knowing and go beyond the nerves and what else is going on to actually share that and deliver it. It was, I think, one of the biggest things.
So, I mean, I guess that I mean, it's fascinating to imagine you there and sort of, the success that you'd had in your business, and your life journey. One would imagine that you would be quite confident striding into the booth. It's quite funny,
I also produced a fly on the wall video of the session, which for anybody who's interested, like they might be interested in that because it actually shows you technically the back and forth between the booth and the conductor, how the piece is broken down and rehearsed in the orchestra. So that's a really fascinating capture. So those two things are available on my YouTube channel.
I'm sure there are many composers in the community that share that same kind of bucket list, desire, or not even in the sense of it, I want to do this before I die, but in the sense that I want to develop myself to the point where this becomes the next thing to do.
Another major thing that I think transformed almost overnight from doing this, having this experience, is informing my composition process to really think more about the players.
Yeah.
Because I grew up, writing for synthesizers or samples in a DAW. And so even though I was writing orchestral music, that connection didn't happen until I actually experienced these performers on stage. And I'm like, oh, like I don't know, something switched like just by that experience, that now I think more about their experience playing the music, and I have a real life touchstone that fuels that. This particularly awakens my incitement for orchestration. Like I didn't have, I know a lot more now about what the role of an orchestrator is. I've worked with a few now, like through the process of preparing my scores for orchestra. And in that learning process of the difference between composition and orchestration, I become more interested in the study of texture and color and how to apply that to the orchestra, and thinking about balance. Like that was another big thing, like, some hard lessons, like the two pieces I recorded first, when we got to mixing, like so many of the instruments and the counter lines that I had written, like couldn't be heard. We had to bump them up in the spot mics to be heard, which is fine. You can solve that problem, but it points to an orchestration problem. Like
Yes.
it wasn't properly balanced in the orchestra. This couldn't have been a concert piece and
Yeah.
sounded the way that I wanted it to sound.
Yeah.
You have so many things, and you have to think about the whole, like thinking about, oh, like I actually tangibly understand now, like why a certain music would work better in a certain hall versus another. Or, you know, just like the choice of why you would, if you're recording like quick ostinatos in a big hall, that's a different sound than if you're recording it in a dry room.
Yeah.
And there's just these more subtle aspects of consideration that from this experience that I can bake into my process of writing. So yeah, I actually had the idea of the contest right when I was going into the second recording session with the NFO, but there was just I still wasn't as comfortable with the process enough to add on another piece of work for me to do. So I kind of just had the idea, thought it was a good idea, but put it on the shelf. But yeah, so I'm recording again in May, and the idea originally comes from that. I think one of the things that I felt with the first session is just I had so much gratitude for having the opportunity to have this experience. And I know how meaningful it was to me on a number of levels. And so I kind of like imagined another person like me and was like, I would really love to pass along that experience to somebody, and, you know, just pay it forward kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the initial impetus for the session. And the thing is, like, the interesting thing about recording with orchestra is like while it's super expensive, the main thing is like and why the NFO helps because they have these shared sessions. The main thing is there's these minimum amounts of time that the orchestra needs to be booked for, so 3 hours.
Yeah.
So that's a big hurdle to cross as a sole person.
Yeah.
So I'm taking advantage of shared sessions, which is really the only reason that I can do this. And so to make it even easier, I'm tacking on like another 15 minutes onto my session and allowing that space for somebody else to record 3 minutes of music, which you can't just say, I want to do that. I think, you know, maybe the NFO would allow that. You know, I'm not sure if they have restrictions, but in any event, generally speaking, if you just want to record one piece of music with a 32-piece orchestra, it's challenging to find a way to do that.
Okay, so let's just rattle through the sort of criteria and process and opportunity. So you're offering basically access to the orchestra for 15 minutes, which will allow them to record 3 minutes worth of music. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, generally speaking, depending on the complexity, obviously, if you're writing like a John Williams, like, you know, huge flourish virtuosic thing, it's going to need to be shorter, right? But yeah, relatively easy piece, you know, 3 minutes is the max that we're allowing for 15 minutes.
How do people sort of submit, if you like, to be considered for this opportunity?
Yeah, so they go to ericturnnessen.com/composer-contest, or just go to ericturnnessen.com, click on music in the main menu, and there's a link for composer contest. And all the instructions are on that page. Ultimately, you just provide your name and email address, and you're sent a link to the submission form. Okay. And the form is online. Just asks you a bunch of questions, and ultimately you submit a PDF score, concert score, and audio MP3. Those are the main things, and that's it. It's pretty straightforward.
And one of the conditions is that it should be somebody that's not been recorded before.
Correct. Yeah, so the contest is called First Time With An Orchestra Composer Contest. And the idea is like really giving that person who's never had the opportunity to hear their music performed by an orchestra this opportunity. There are some scenarios that are excluded, like if the ensemble is less than 7 people, you still qualify. If you've had your music performed by an orchestra in a education setting below university, that's fine. Like if a high school orchestra played it or something, or if you attended some workshop, right? I know people have attended like conductor workshops or other workshops where they get to share an orchestra, and you know that doesn't count either.
Presumably, if the person is able to, in principle, I guess they could come along to the session, right?
Yeah, and that's actually preferable in my perspective. Like they're actually, because they're definitely invited to come in person, and I think encouraged. It's different. Like I would say, it's definitely great to have your music performed by an orchestra, but like for example, if we're doing this over Zoom, this is great, right? But if I was there in person with you, it would be a much more multi-dimensional experience, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's definitely ideal if the person is able to come, but that's not a requirement because and the NFO does support and facilitate attending remotely via Zoom. You don't need to be doing this professionally. Like already, there's been submissions from, and actually it touches me because there's been some submissions from people who are 15 and 16 years old
Yeah.
so far. And I'm like, oh wow, like there actually are literally people who were in my when
Yeah.
I was 16 writing music and wanting to have my stuff performed with an orchestra.
It's wonderful. And what's the cutoff date for submissions?
May 1st.
Okay, cool. And I'm very happy to help to promote it. I'll be very interested to see the journey and the result
Mm.
and maybe even be there, to sort of
Yeah.
just see it for myself.
And I'll also say, like, in addition to the orchestra actually performing the work, it's being recorded professionally. So you'll have recordings for on the all the spot mics, on all the room mics, and all the outriggers. Um, there will be a mix and mastered version of the piece that will happen, the final performance.
Yeah.
And also there will be behind the scenes video footage
Right.
that the winner will get, not edited,
Mhm.
but they'll get all the raw footage because I haven't determined what I'm going to do for my BTS package yet. I usually have multiple cameras, but whatever I have for my sessions will
Okay.
carry over into this, and probably like 4 cameras at least. But in that footage will be a wide angle camera shot of the whole orchestra, so you could literally just take that out of the box and post it somewhere if you don't have any editing skills.
The main thing at this stage is to make people aware of it so that they can kind of grab the opportunity. All right, brilliant.
But yeah, if people have any questions for me about it, like, again, the website has a lot of info, but mostly I'm encouraging people to communicate with me through Instagram.
Okay.
Um, so my handle is just Eric Turnnessen at Eric Turnnessen. So you can DM me there if you have any questions about the contest.
But yeah, this is very much Eric's thing, and we're just providing another sort of platform to publicize it. But I'm very happy to do that, and it feels really nice. It's a wonderful thing. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
everybody that's eligible should grab the opportunity really, and I really look forward to seeing who is the lucky composer.
Yeah, me too. And I'm very grateful for you being willing to do this and helping to spread the word about it. It means a lot to me.
Well, thank you, Eric. I'll leave it there for now. I'll go and edit this up and get it out there as quickly as I can so that people have got maximum time, to actually prepare. And yeah, keep me posted on how it goes. Thanks, Eric. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Hopefully see you in Manchester.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That would be great. Cheers. Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.